Let's talk to Jake Wallis Simons from the Jewish Chronicle. He's the editor, of course. Before we do that, though, let's have a look at Joe Biden, because Joe Biden's taking credit for, of course, this peace deal in the Middle East.
After 8 months of nonstop negotiation, my administration, a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached by Israel and Hamas, the elements of which I laid out in great detail in May of this year. This plan was developed and negotiated by my team and will be largely implemented by the incoming administration.
Largely implemented by the incoming administration, which happens to be headed by one Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States of America, who said last week if the hostages aren't released by the date he is inaugurated, which is Monday, they will be held to pay. So I think we all know who's responsible for this. Jake, a very good morning to you. There seems to be a last-minute hitch slightly. Just before we spoke, Benjamin Netanyahu came out and accused Hamas of blackmail, says the Israeli cabinet would not meet to approve the ceasefire deal until Hamas agrees to all of the details which they previously supposedly were going to agree to. So does that put a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not done until it's done, and if it's not done, then it will make Joe Biden's claiming credit for it look even more ridiculous. That clip that just played, I mean, he looked so petty. I mean, the main thing he was interested in was who gets the credit rather than the hostages.
Yeah, it was all about me, wasn't it? It wasn't about them.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about that is that he wanted to get this deal done in May, as he pointed out. Well, if it had been done in May, then we'd be in a very different position to the one we were in now. The IDF would not have taken Rafah. Sinwar would still be alive. Nasrallah would still be alive. Hezbollah would still be in full power. And the Ayatollah would still be riding high. He'd still have his air defences and all of his proxy militia around the region. And so there'd be no pressure on Hamas, really, to take the deal. The deal only was got over the line, really, by the IDF destroying Hezbollah, decimating Hamas, and humiliating Iran. And, of course, Assad went as well. That weakened Hamas so much. Didn't have a leg to stand on and were forced to come to the table more seriously. And of course, let's not forget Donald Trump vowing that they'd be held to pay if they didn't do the deal by the time he comes to office. Now, these are the factors that brought Hamas to negotiate seriously, and it looks like come to the brink of signing this thing. It's not signed yet, though, and Biden looks totally irrelevant and pathetic, trying to claim the credit for something that he had nothing to do with actually getting over the line, and also isn't even done yet.
And even his team, you can't claim credit really either. I mean, Antony Blinken's been in and out of the Middle East for the best part of the last year and a half, but, you know, it wasn't clear what he was achieving. What has clearly happened here in the Middle East, and I'm very pleased that it has happened, is Israel has basically done the world's work for them by denuding Hamas, by getting rid of Hezbollah, by destabilising Syria to such an extent that Assad is gone, and by clipping the wings of Iran. So, you know, thanks very much to Israel, but no thanks really to Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, it's important to recognise as well that all of those achievements which I just listed, from destroying Hamas and Hezbollah to Iran and Assad, they were all achieved in spite of the Americans. I mean, the Americans tried to pressure the Israelis not to do any of that stuff. The only answer that they've had to all of the aggression and hostility over the past year and a bit is de-escalation. Remember, take the win. Remember, don't. All of those pieces of wisdom that have come from the White House have been trying to stop Israel from winning. And that has been allied with more hostile rhetoric against Israel than we've seen against Hamas from the Biden administration, accusing them of going over the top and of disregarding Palestinian life. So he's been criticising Israel, demanding that they don't win, and now he's trying to take credit for the fact that they really have.
Right. And the same can be said for David Lammy, who was only there the other day, wasn't he, seeing Mohammed Abbas in the Palestinian Authority. He was sending very mixed signals, it seems to me. He went to Israel. I'm amazed anybody from Israel wanted to meet him, given that he'd said that if Prime Minister Netanyahu came to London, he'd have him arrested.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that David Lammy and the British government matters rather less to the Israeli administration than the Americans do. People don't really care very much what he says or thinks. But you're right. I mean, you know, he's only come into office fairly recently, but has taken various measures that are hostile to Israel, including cancelling some arms export licenses to Israel, which
and
again,
that's still holding at the moment, isn't it? That cancellation.
It's still holding, but it's a tiny fraction of the arms that Israel gets. It doesn't make any difference to anybody apart from a bit of virtue signalling.
Right.
And also, of course, he allowed the case to go ahead against Netanyahu, which led to that arrest warrant, and has now said that he will abide by it. So these are not really the behaviour of an ally who wants Israel to win on our behalf. Don't forget, Israel, as you said, is fighting the enemies that would see us dead too.
Yeah, and also, and the final sort of nail in the coffin, I suppose, for all of this is we've got another Palestinian protest coming up on Saturday. Would you expect them to be hailing the peace deal?
Well, look, I mean, if this ceasefire is agreed, as we hope it will be, it's difficult to know how they can justify any protest, because that's exactly what they've been calling for.
Right.
I mean, that is tarnished by this unseemly row where the Jewish community has been begging the police to stop these guys going past their synagogues. They've got 7 routes they can pursue in London for their marches. 2 of them go past synagogues. The police have finally said to these Palestinian activists, you can use the other 5, don't go past the synagogues. And they've vowed to resist.
Yeah.
They resist the police by all means necessary, they've said, because they want to go past those synagogues. Now, what could the reason for that be? Is that really out of humanitarian concern for the Palestinians? Is it really because they oppose all war everywhere and against genocide everywhere? Not that genocide's happening in Gaza, of course. No, the only reason why they could object to being routed away from synagogues is because they want to hassle the Jews now.
Of course, absolutely right. As somebody pointed out on X a little bit earlier today, and this was never about Gaza, it was always about the destruction of Israel at the end of the day. Jake Wallis Simons, thank you very much indeed, editor of the Jewish Chronicle.